The best place to hide the truth is in the pages of a book.
Maybe we should just read. Maybe we should just read.
Welcome to Hayes Reviews. Hello and good evening. This is Nick, creator of Hayes Reviews. Welcome back for another live stream, live reading. Tonight we're continuing with Zbigniew Brzezinski's 1970 publication, Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technatronic Era. This is part 4. We are about 52 pages into the book. So for about 10 hours of live streaming, it's pretty slow going, but the book is dense. It's academic. Every sentence is packed full of information and detail, and he wasn't messing around. This is the book that got him noticed by some of the most renowned and despicable internationalists. This is the book that he put out that put him on the radar of people such as David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger, and which got him the backing, the funding, got the doors to open for his creation of the Trilateral Commission Group, which exists to this day. They're still pulling strings from behind the scenes, putting out reports, bringing together people from different places all over the world, from business, from finance, from politics, from you name it. They are pulling the world's movers and shakers, the people with the power, the influence, getting them together and coordinating their efforts so that they can solve the world's problems and make life better for everybody and every single one of us. Isn't that very nice and noble and kind and decent of them? But that's what they'll tell you they're doing if you go to their official publications and look at what they publish on their website. But if you look at what is actually happening around the world, I think you will be able to see that the picture is kind of grim. And what we see unfolding is a kind of techno-fascism. It's digital technology mediated slavery. Never before has the technology existed for the tyrants and the psychopaths to establish such a system of control, of surveillance, of data gathering, and not only physical control, but also control of the mind. Well, in this book, back in the 60s when he wrote it, in the 70s when it was published and republished in further editions, Zbigniew Brzezinski really laid out the plans. He led us into what was possible and what was being worked on behind the scenes. And I say he let us into it. I don't think he wrote this book with us in mind. I think it was written to get the attention of the people above him who are higher in the food chain, who could open the doors, who could get his daughter a job on the evening news and get his son a nice cushy job as an ambassador, for example. I think these kinds of books are written to signal to the elite that, hey, I understand how this game works. I understand what to say and what not to say. I can help you. And it's like I'm reading it kind of like it's a CV. It's sort of written with this intention of getting noticed. I don't think it was for public consumption. But as I said on last Friday's live stream, it's kind of heavy going. Some of these sentences are long and dense and hard to pick apart in real time. But I am not going to let that put me off. Tonight we are going to be continuing. We're actually going to be finishing part 1 tonight. And there are 5 parts to this book. And part 1 has been pretty amazing in terms of the revelations and the acknowledgements and the admissions that have been committed to paper. But part 1 is called The Global Impact of the Technatronic Revolution. And we have covered topics such as the American impact, social explosion and implosion, new social patterns, global ghettos. And tonight we're continuing with global fragmentation and unification. So thank you all for being here. If you're watching live, we've got Celine Lyon, Mindhack Adam, Lil Ronnie Cooper, and Frank over on YouTube. We've got Turbs over on Rumble. And I think we're pretty quiet over on Odyssey as per. The Odyssey stream's been a bit strange recently. It has been crapping out and stuttering and struggling to load and play smoothly, but I think I fixed that now. So hopefully, if you were watching it on Odyssey and you gave up because it was being kind of crappy, you should be able to go back over there and enjoy the platform, which seems to have the least amount of censorship, the least amount of rule breaking and booting and closing down of accounts and control over what can and cannot be said. I think Odyssey is a pretty good contender for free speech. And then Entropy as well. I do always forget that we're streaming to Entropy, and that is a place where you can view that. They're very pro free speech over on Entropy. Say what you want about whoever you want over there. And they also have a super chat function. So if you sign up and put your card details in, you can send me some dollar, some pounds, some euros, some shekels, some, I don't know, what other currencies might there be? Dong. That's the Vietnamese currency, if you didn't know. Dong. It could be won. That's Korea. It could be baht. That's Thailand. But I doubt there's anybody in those countries watching us. But Asmelia is here as well. Hello to you. Good to have you here. So yes, thank you for being here. If you're tuning in live, if you're watching on the replay, there'll be a pinned comment below the video. It's got timestamps on it, and you can use that to navigate ahead to the reading or to the different parts of tonight's preamble ramble, which we will get into without any further ado. So tonight's preamble ramble, I've got I went on a little bit of a different direction with this one. I was looking up I was going to look at the Trilateral Commission's official website, and that was boring, just massive lists of people who were in the commission and all the banks and businesses and tech companies that they belong to. And I'm like, yeah, this is all boring. We know that it's a big revolving door at the very tippy top of this pyramid that we have been born into. So I was flicking through the book to make some notes about things that I can mention to recap. And I didn't get past this page, which I'm showing on the screen now, which is actually the first page. This is the page before part 1, after the introduction, where we have a quote. And this is a picture I took from my edition, and I did do the pencil marking on this book. And I probably shouldn't be pencil marking this book because it's pretty expensive, hard to find, and with every pencil mark that I put in there, it's probably making it less valuable. But I don't intend on selling it. I'm going to keep it, I think, in my collection. I'll hand it down to my son when he is old enough to read books such as this. So I'm thinking, maybe about 6 or 7 years old. Yes, bedtime story time is going to be fun in our house, that's for sure. But I got to this page and I thought, Steppenwolf, Hermann Hesse, I don't know anything about this author, I don't know anything about the book, but Zbigniew decided to preface his magnum opus, Between Two Ages, this notoriously famous book, with this quote. So I'll read the quote and then I'll show you what I dug up looking into Hermann Hesse and the novel Steppenwolf. So this is, as I mentioned, this is right after the introduction. And the quote that Zbigniew has used, which has inspired the title of the book, in fact, is as follows. Quote, "Human life is reduced to real suffering, to hell, only when two ages, two cultures and religions overlap. There are times when a whole generation is caught in this way between two ages, two modes of life, with the consequence that it loses all power to understand itself and has no standard, no security, no simple acquiescence." When I first read that quote, I just picked up on this description of being in hell, and I underlined the title of the book, Between Two Ages. But rereading it, revisiting it, what's he talking? He's talking about two cultures and religions overlapping. Well, what is going on in the Western world at the minute? One of the main topics, I mean, the thing that's been all over my social media and the different talking heads has been this footage of a young girl in Scotland brandishing a machete and an axe, and she's doing so to defend herself against the predatory advances of some non-Scottish men, and this is a girl I'm talking about, non-Scottish men who are being inappropriate, making advances, pestering her, being shits, basically. This is a really viral piece of content that's going around at the moment. I haven't looked too deeply into it. I don't know the story behind it and around it. I thought I saw somewhere that she was arrested for having dangerous weapons, which is just a sign of the ridiculous, nonsensical stupidity of the era that we live in. But this quote is telling us right here, when two cultures and religions overlap, human life is reduced to real suffering and to hell. So Hermann Hesse knew this back in the 1920s when he wrote and published his book, Steppenwolf. So it makes you realize that this has been known and that the whole diversity, cultural inclusivity, mass immigration scam that has been pulled on us has been done for a reason. It's not accidental. It is not something that has just happened organically. It's just evolved and nobody could have foreseen what would have happened. No, it is known, and it is known very well by the big boys, as Alan Watt would say, at the top of the pyramid with the revolving door, the ones who create civilizations and knock them down once they have extracted all their wealth and move on to another place to do the same. Yes, there are people in this world who do that. It is the dominant minority, and they have been running these scams since time immemorial. They know that if you smash together two cultures, you smash together two religions, human life is reduced to suffering, to hell. That is how you create hell on earth, right? And then going on with the quote, it says there's a time when a whole generation is caught in this way between two ages. I'd say that's literally where we're at now. We are that generation that are caught between two ages, that are being reduced to real suffering and to hell. And it says as well that this generation who gets stuck between two ages lose all power to understand itself. And isn't that so poignant and true? How many of us have been divorced from our culture, from our home, our national home, the geography and the landscape that our ancestors inhabited and lived in and we were born into. We're being ripped away from that. And not to say that we want to go back to any particular time, because even back in the good old days, things weren't that good, and it was still managed and manufactured and engineered to be that way. We're just going into the next phase now. But without that understanding of your culture and your history and your national identity or your religious identity or whatever it may be, it is very hard to understand yourself. And you do get reduced to a kind of unthinking automata who is just mindlessly consuming content, eating the junk food, going to work, slapping the keyboard, spending the money on the frivolous, shallow material things, trying to battle with debt and with increasing living costs and global insecurity and all the fear mongering and the outrage, clickbait, fear porn that is pumped at us 24/7. It's very hard to find the time to sit down and go within and understand yourself. So he's right. Hermann Hesse was right on the money in this part where he says that we've lost that ability to understand ourselves. And then he says that this generation caught between two ages has no standard, no security, no simple acquiescence. So, yeah, it's quite a powerful quote, and I'm sure no accident that Zbigniew chose this to preface his book. Now, on a previous preamble ramble, we had a look at the this image on the front of the book, which bears a striking resemblance to kind of demonic sigils of characters such as, let me think, their names are escaping me now. I want to say Beelzebub, but he's not one of them. Something that begins with B. Baal, I think, was one of them. It looks like a demonic sigil. It looks like a devil sigil. And I showed you some examples of a devil sigil that kind of have characteristics. This quote and this book and this writer furthers that kind of occultic context which this book comes out of. So we're gonna go into that and have a look now. So Between Two Ages, Hermann Hesse, Steppenwolf. Let's go to the next tab. Steppenwolf. So this is a novel. If in case you didn't know, I didn't know. So in case you didn't know, I'm going to tell you that Steppenwolf is a novel. And it's the 10th novel by German-Swiss author Hermann Hesse. And I'm calling him Hesse. I don't know how you pronounce this German last name. I apologize to any German-Swiss people in the audience who are shaking their heads at my terrible butchering. But I'm going to go with Hesse. This fellow won the Nobel Prize in Literature back in 1946. And he's interested in Eastern religious, spiritual, philosophical traditions. And he combined Jungian analysis with some of the stuff as well. And he was a manic depressive and suicidal, had lots of mental health issues that he was dealing with and that influenced his writing. Okay, so the book Steppenwolf, one of his most famous, as we'll see, was published in Germany in 1927. The story in large part reflects a profound crisis in Hesse's spiritual world during the 20s. So so in the 20s, you're coming out of World War I. Not surprising that many people are having a total crisis of spirituality and how could this happen and how could people be reduced to doing this to each other, and hint, hint, it's the dominant minority that we were talking about who manufacture these events because they know that is a way to keep people under control, to keep harvesting resources. And it's amazing that people can be, just common everyday people can be brainwashed and mind controlled into going over there and killing a bunch of common everyday people who you've never met and you have no problem with just because, right? Just because we told you to, they want to steal your potatoes. You need to go over there and kill them. But that's a science. and Alan Watt often reminds us of this, that these people, they know the ancient sciences of running countries, of building up nations, of building civilizations, of managing huge populations and getting them to fight each other and have these what's described as horizontal wars, right? Where seems to be getting set up now in England and other countries with the Muslim population and the non-Muslim populations. Horizontal wars, people killing each other and fighting each other on the ground, when really it should be a vertical war. It should be up the pyramid to the very top, where these useless eliters sit in lives of ridiculous luxury and leisure, and they don't want to work, they don't produce anything, they are not creative, they're just psychopathically manipulating and exploiting the rest of us. But part of their ability to do that lies in the continuation of these horizontal conflicts, playing groups off against one another. It's divide and conquer ad nauseam. Divide et impera ad nauseam. And that's my Latin accent, which, as you can tell, I've never even heard Latin spoken aloud before, so I have no idea what it sounds like. But it's divide and conquer ad nauseam, until it makes you sick, forever, and on and on and on. That's their modus operandi. So you can understand a profound crisis going on in Hesse's spiritual world in the 1920s. This novel was wildly popular and has remained a perpetual success, but Hesse later says that it was largely misunderstood. Aren't all the great and most important artists largely misunderstood? So what's the background and the publication history? Well, in 1924, Hermann Hesse married a singer, Ruth Wenger. Good for him. And I've got to say that this section on the background and publication history is really weird. I think there's more to the story. There's stuff being left out. Might be an interesting person to look into a little deeper. But this first paragraph here basically says that he married this singer called Ruth Wenger, and then he buggered off out of the country for a long time. And then when he moved back, he refused to live with her. He rented a separate apartment, which added to his isolation. I mean, it sounds to me like it's self-isolation, but it doesn't say that in the Wikipedia article. Then he goes on a little holiday with his wife, and then after that, he just stops seeing her altogether. And it says, the resulting isolation and inability to make lasting contact with the outside world led to increasing despair and the return of Hesse's suicidal thoughts. So this sounds like a very tortured individual. Unable to make meaningful relationships, avoiding contact with his wife. I mean, I don't know what Ruth Wenger was like. Maybe she was a bit of a horror show herself and she was worth avoiding and staying away from. I don't know. But he struggled to make friends, poor Hesse. So then he began writing Steppenwolf in Basel, and he finished it in Zurich. In 1926, he published a precursor to the book, which was a collection of poems titled The Crisis, from Hermann Hesse's diary. And then in 1926, he became acquainted with jazz music. You see what I mean? It's a really strange section. It doesn't kind of explain how all this ties in to the context of the book. But in the case of the jazz music, he became a fan of this person called Sidney Bechet, who was an early jazz improviser who played saxophone and clarinet. And then this person, Sidney Bechet, inspired a character in the book Steppenwolf, who was the character was called Pablo. So that's a little bit of context and background to the man and the context around the book. What is the plot of the book? Now, I don't know if anyone on the call has read this book. It sounds nuts. The plot is pretty wild, but not at the beginning. But then you'll see near the end. It just sounds bonkers. So the plot summary. The book is presented as a manuscript written by its protagonist, a middle-aged man named Harry Haller. And this guy, as we find out, he's beset by reflections of his being ill-suited for the world of everyday regular people. So Hesse was putting a lot of himself in this character, as authors tend to do. You know, we write what we know, and what we know is our lived experience. And so I hate that phrase, lived experience, but you know what I'm getting at. So Harry is sad, and he doesn't fit in with the everyday regular people, and specifically he doesn't fit in with the bourgeois society. So he starts wandering aimlessly around the city, and he encounters a person who's carrying an advertisement for a magic theater. And this person gives him a small book, which is called Treatise on the Steppenwolf. So Harry reads the treatise, which is cited in full in the novel's text. And the book, Treatise on the Steppenwolf, addresses Harry by name and strikes him as describing himself uncannily. So this is where it starts getting strange. This idea of reading a book which describes you, and as you're reading it, and this concept has been used elsewhere. I can't think where off the top of my head right now, but definitely the idea that what is written, it's like the idea of discovering that you're a character in a novel or a piece of fiction, right? It's that meta exploration. So it's that kind of thing. He's reading the book and then he realizes it's about him and it's describing him, which is quite an interesting concept. So this book, it is a discourse on a man who believes himself to be of two natures, one high, man's spiritual nature, and the other low and animalistic, a wolf on the steppes, the Steppenwolf. This man is entangled in an irresolvable struggle, never content with either nature because he cannot see beyond this self-made concept. And this is where we get the introduction of this duality, this dialectic, this binary existing within one person, but causing pain, suffering, struggle, being neither one nor the other, and then not fitting in either way. If he was just a wolf, he could go off and be with the wolf pack and do wolf stuff. And if he was just a man, he could go off and be a bourgeois, part of the bourgeois, and then and have fun with doing bourgeois stuff. But he's part man, part animal, and this is causing this hell within him. And this kind of ties in and reflects what I think Zbignew's teaching in this book, which is the between two ages. It's that hellish time as we are transitioning. But as we know, or at least as I think I know, what's on the other side of this transition is not going to be better. We're actually transitioning into an even worse kind of hell, one which I think a lot of people will not see coming because they think convenience and comfort are the most important things in life, right? So we're kind of starting to see why Zbig might have chosen to preface the book with a quote from this novel. But continuing with the story, the plot, he reads this book, which seems to be about himself, which also gives an explanation of the multifaceted and indefinable nature of every man's soul. But Harry is either unable or unwilling to recognize this. So the main character doesn't want to admit or accept the existence of the soul, which might say a lot as to why he's suicidal and miserable and sad and depressed and all that other stuff, right? He doesn't have a spiritual life or connection with anything bigger, grander, or more glorious outside of himself. It also discusses his suicidal intentions, describing him as one of the quote-unquote suicides. And these are people who deep down knew they would take their life one day, but to consider that, it hails his potential to be great. But to counter that, it hails his potential to be great, to be one of the immortals. So again, it's another duality. It's kind of like you're miserable, you're depressed, you're useless, go kill yourself, but you have this potential to be great, to be fantastic, to do incredible things, to have a positive impact on people's lives. And both of those potentialities are true within all of us, I guess, because the future, is not yet written. He's battling with that as well. So moving on in the story, later on, he meets a former friend of his who he used to enjoy discussing Oriental mythology with, and he goes to his house. And while he's there, he is disgusted by the nationalistic mentality of his friend. Nationalism? Yes, we do not like nationalism. Why? Because it causes wars, don't you know? And that is the one and only reason. And this is why we need to transcend the nation, and we need to build supranational organizations to ensure we don't fight each other and kill each other again, because it's that pesky nationalism which keeps causing common people to go and kill other common people in other places, and it's nothing to do with the bankers and the bloodlines and the secret societies and all that other stuff. No, nothing to do with them. So Harry's disgusted by the nationalism of his friend. And then he upsets his friend and his wife by criticizing something or other. And that confirms to Harry that he is and always will be a stranger to society. So it reaffirms this sense of not belonging, of not fitting in, of being sad and lonely and depressed and all that kind of thing, right? So then he doesn't want to go home because he thinks, once I get home, there's nothing there for me other than suicide. So he's carries on meandering around the town, and then he bumps into a young woman called Hermine, and she recognizes his desperation, and they become friends. And Hermine introduces Harry to the indulgences of what he calls the bourgeois. She teaches him to dance, introduces him to casual drug use, finds him a lover, and, more importantly, forces him to accept these as legitimate and worthy aspects of a full life. Right. So this bit's very interesting to me because it reminded me of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, right? Where everyone's having sex, they're all taking soma all day, every day, and they are just engaging in frivolous games. I forget the name of it, Zinging Zumble Bumble Puppy or something like that. And they're living very shallow, childlike lives of perpetual self-indulgence and satisfaction of one's impulses. And so Hermione introduces Harry to that and forces him to accept these as legitimate and worthy aspects of a full life, reminding me of, what's the little bald Israeli guy? Yuval Noah Harari's predictions that the useless class are just going to get drugs and computer games in the future, yeah? So quite interesting foreshadowing or symbolic rendering of the kind of things we're seeing in other authors and unrolling, in reality in 2025. But continuing with the plot, Hermione then introduces Harry to a mysterious saxophonist, Pablo, who is based on this fellow up here, Sidney Bechet. And Pablo is the opposite of what Harry considers a serious and thoughtful man. After attending a lavish masquerade ball, Pablo brings Harry to his metaphorical magic theatre, where the concerns and notions that plagued his soul disintegrate as he interacts with the ethereal and phantasmal. So that to me immediately had me thinking of entities, spirits, demons, whatever you want to call it. Something above makes connecting with these aspects gives him some measure of relief, some measure of happiness, some measure of escape, maybe from his from his suffering. And then at the Magic Theatre, he experiences the fantasies that exist in his mind. So this is an interesting phrase. And without having read the book, I'm trying to do an analysis on a Wikipedia summary of a book here, which is ridiculous. But it's like he goes into and gets wrapped up in his own fantasies. And so it's like the ultimate escapism almost. And the Magic Theatre itself is really has had a massive impact on music and media and culture to this day, as we're going to see in a minute. But this final paragraph of the plot summary is where it really gets absolutely batshit. Okay, so with no other context or explanation or anything or scene setting, it just says, I'll just read the whole thing. It says, Harry appears and kills Hermione with a knife while she lies next to Pablo, the saxophonist. Pablo wakes and covers her body with a rug and exits the room, after which he returns, disguised as Mozart, to chastise Harry for his attitude in life. Harry realizes that by stabbing Hermione, he simply projected his own suicidal desires, recognizes Pablo behind his disguise, and, as the hallucination fades away, Pablo picks up the dead Hermione, who is now transformed into a chess piece, and puts her in his pocket. So, and that is the stunning climactic and conclusion to this book. So, pretty nuts, pretty crazy stuff. I think you'll agree. There's a section here, though, on critical analysis. Hesse wrote that Steppenwolf was more often and more violently misunderstood than any of his other books. Well, I mean, what do you expect when people are turning into chess pieces and psychedelic saxophonists are disguising themselves as Mozart to tell you off for your shitty attitude, right? I mean, come on. He felt that his readers, this is Hesse, felt that his readers focused only on the suffering and despair in Harry's life and missed the possibility of transcendence and healing. From reading that summary, I didn't get a sense of much possibility of transcendence and healing. It seemed to just go inwards. He seemed to contact demons, take on some entities, get wrapped up in his own fantasies, and then have some sort of hallucination, which doesn't make any sense, and then the end. So, I don't know. Without reading it, again, I'm just commenting on something I haven't read, but maybe there's a reason nobody could pick up on that theme. Maybe because it's not there. And then the critical reception says, close friends and longtime readers of Hesse criticized the novel for its perceived immorality because it had open depiction of sex and drug use. And I think this open depiction of sex and drug use back in the 20s helps explain why it has had such a massive impact. Because if we go down to this section here, which is references in popular culture, we're going to find out that there are so many references, a lot of them musical, right? So it says, so the first one, this is just some of the references, but in 1967, the band Steppenwolf took its name from the novel. And I was like, I've heard of that band before. And these are the guys who did Born to Be Wild. And they also did a song, their second hit, which wasn't as big as Born to Be Wild. It's called Magic Carpet Ride. And I thought, oh, I know that song. I've heard it. I'll have a listen. I'll listen to it. It's pretty catchy. I think it's in a Tarantino film or something. But if you listen to the lyrics, they're kind of weird. So this is a 1968 song. And it says, I like to dream, yes, yes, right between the sound machine. There, I was thinking headphones. Dreaming between the sound machine. And I was actually thinking, I do and have done in the past, liked to fall asleep with my headphones in, usually listening to podcasts or somebody speaking. But yeah, liking to dream right between the sound machine. I thought that was quite prescient. On a cloud of sound, I drift in the night. So it's quite trippy, psychedelic type music. But the chorus is, you don't know what we can find. Why don't you come with me, little girl, on a magic carpet ride? So the singer's luring a little girl onto his magic carpet for a ride. And he says, you don't know what we can see. Why don't you tell your dreams to me? Fantasy will set you free. And just as it did set Harry free in the Steppenwolf book, presumably. And the post-chorus of the song says, close your eyes, girl. Look inside, girl. Let the sound take you away. So, yeah, creepy shit. Why would you... What kind of creeps going around trying to... I mean, a magic carpet, to me, that makes me think of... it's not a Western thing, is it? It's not a European thing. Magic carpet, I think of it's like Arabian Nights type stuff, like Aladdin. And, who are the people that come from that part of the world? And do they have anything to do with little girls and luring them to go and do things? And, well, I don't know. I'll let you fill in the blanks. But that was the first reference in popular culture, the band Steppenwolf. They also had another song called Hoochie Coochie Man, which was quite entertaining. But moving down the list, there's the Magic Theater Company, founded in 1967 in Berkeley and now moved to San Francisco, and it takes its name from the Magic Theater of the novel. And check out the logo for this. It's an all-seeing eye on a kind of a sort of like a crucifix with five letters which spell the word magic in a sort of pentacle arrangement around the all-seeing eye. So it's an all-seeing eye in the middle of a pentacle instead of a triangle, which makes a nice change. But they're still going, and they've had a bunch of famous actors performing there, such as Woody Harrelson and Sean Penn. There's a track called Steppenwolf on Hawkwind's album Astounding Sounds, Amazing Music. Danish acid rock band Steppenwolf also took its name from the novel. Then there's a song, Magic Dragon Theater, from Utopia's 1977 album, Ra. And then there's He Was a Steppenwolf, which is a song by Boney M. from the album Night Flight to Venus. Zbigniew Brzezinski, of course, as we know, included the quotation as an epigraph to his... Oh, that's the word for it. It's an epigraph. Okay, nice. As an epigraph to his 1970 book, Between Two Ages. And what I thought was curious here is Between Two Ages is hyperlinked, but it takes you to a dead page that just says there's no article on Wikipedia. Why, you know? So I wonder if there used to be an article on Wikipedia about this book explaining the crazy stuff that's written in it, and now it's gone, you know? But there's also a band called the United States of America who had a track on their debut album called The American Metaphysical Circus, which had lyrics that refer to the book. Be Here Now, a book by Ram Dass, contains an illustration of a door bearing a sign that reads, Magic Theatre for Madmen Only, price of admission, your mind. And that is a reference to the line in the book where Harry Haller, the protagonist, receives an invitation which says, Anarchist evening at the Magic Theatre for madmen only, price of admission, your mind. So you have to give up your mind, right? Give over your ability to think, to reason, to assess, to interpret, to do all the things that the mind does, to imagine, to be creative. You have to give that up, and you can come and have fun in the Magic Theatre with all the demons and the spirits and whatnot. There's also a French singer who sings a song called Gourmandizes, and that's sorry, let me do that again. French singer Alizée sings her song Gourmandizes to Le Loup des Steppes, which literally means the wolf of the steppes. I don't know what that means, singing the song to Le Loup des Steppes, but it's a reference. There's also a high school team in Pretty Little Liars who are called the Steppenwolves. That's a TV show. There's a character named Steppenwolf in the DC Comics Fourth World Saga. There's also a composer and trombonist called Christian Lindberg who wrote a viola concerto subtitled Steppenwolf in 2011. And the Hungarian hip-hop producer, singer, songwriter, drummer, film director, and animator Holy released a song titled Pusztási Farkas, which means Steppenwolf, and that was on his second album. So this novel has had a big impact, in particular the realm of music, back in the 60s and 70s. So it seems to me like it's part of that whole psychedelic hippie kind of movement. And if you have a look as well at the the album cover from the Steppenwolf album, this is their second album. It also has the 5-pointed star on there, with the guys in the band sort of standing around looking down on the viewer, which is us in this case, who's and this is kind of putting us in the position of being on our back, and the color scheme is making us suggest that we're lying down on our back, tripping balls, as they like to say, seeing 5 pointed stars in the sky, and having the 5 members of Steppenwolf ominously standing over us, trying to tempt us to go and ride a magic carpet with them. But lots of references, as you can see. And there was also a film adaptation. Yes, there was indeed. 1974, and this was directed by Fred Haynes. And so I thought I'd have a look at that next. So the film Steppenwolf, an adaptation of the novel, follows the adventures of a half-man, half-animal named Harry Haller. And he's depressed in Germany in the 1920s. He's resentful of his middle-class station, and he wants to die, not knowing the world around him. Then he meets 2 strange people who introduce him to life and a bizarre world called the Magic Theatre. In the production notes, it says the film took 7 years of complicated pre-production because its producers, Melvin Abner Fishman and Richard Herland, a student of Jungian alchemy, wanted the film to be the first Jungian film and built up relationships with the Hesse family that allowed the film rights to the book to be released. And it was filmed on location in Basel, Switzerland, and Germany. It also says further down that the book was a bit of the film went really badly, and the family have since stopped giving away any of the rights for film adaptations of any of Hesse's books, because the 2 that they did give permission to be made turned out so badly. So there will be no more film adaptations of Hesse's books. But I had a quick search on YouTube, and the entire film is here for us to view. And I thought I would play a clip from it, because apparently it had some fairly amazing special effects for its time. it contains some the cutting edge of special effects. And so this scene here, this is the lover that he's introduced to, and this is the point where I think he makes the decision. This is our man Harry over here, who makes the decision to go into the magic theater and ride around on the magic carpet. So I'm going to mute myself for a minute, and we'll play a little clip of this and check out some of these cutting edge 1970s visual video effects.
You are even ready to go through hell to find me?
Is there any other way?
You dreamed of escape. You have a longing to forsake this world, to penetrate to a world beyond time. You know this other world exists.
I can give you nothing that isn't already within you. All I can give you is the chance.
Brother Harry, I invite you to a little entertainment for 1 man only and one price only. Your mind. Are you ready? And now I'll show you our little magic theater. As many doors as you like, and behind each door, exactly what you are looking for.
Bet Victor.
They always time the ads so perfectly, don't they?
But the price of admission will be a trifling little suicide. You don't mind, do you? To conquer time and reality, you must extinguish these superfluous reflections you call your personality. All it takes is a hearty laugh. Excellent, Harry. Excellent, Harry. You laugh like the immortal ciel.
Penetrate to a world beyond time.
It's all illusion, the magic theater, not reality.
Something that isn't already within you.
So there you go. I can leave that playing in the background, but you kind of get in the sense of this book, of the story, of this amazing 1970s adaptation that you can watch on YouTube for free. And I'm hoping doesn't get me some sort of copyright strike, but surely not, because the whole thing is here on YouTube. But yeah, you can play in the Magic Theater. All it will cost you is your mind and a little suicide, which doesn't sound all that bad when it's said in a French accent, does it? But that's my little sort of preamble ramble, deep, not even a deep dive, but shallow dive, let's say, into this quote, this epigraph, which Zbigniew Brzezinski has put at the beginning of his book, which is quite curious, isn't it, that he would reference something so Jungian, so abstract, so crazy, so strange, in a book that is meant to be serious, that is meant to be about geopolitics, about technology, about society, about countries, about economics, all the serious academic things that he deals with. And he uses a quote from something that's kind of very strange, trippy, psychedelic, and written by a very miserable, suicidal German man. But there we are. And Dars, good evening to you, says, you block Origin for blocking ads. Thank you. I do need to install something like an ad blocker. I know. I just never get around to doing any of the sort of IT hygiene that I should be doing. And there's another ad. So that's our sign to move on from this. All right. That is it for my preamble ramble. Just a little exploration of this epigraph. Good to have you all here. I've seen a few extra people, Ken Casey and Burning Beard in the chat over there. Nice to see you all talking. Sorry I can't pick out individual comments. David James is here as well. But nice that you're all getting on with each other and having a good time. I thought I saw somebody else. Oh yeah, we've got ESP and Abstract Conflict as well over on Odyssey. Nice one. What's up? Good to see you all. And Abstract Conflict has promised to send me some rupees. Thank you very much. I will look forward to using those when I travel to India. I think that's where they use rupees, isn't it? India. But yeah, thank you for hanging in there for tonight's Preamble Ramble. allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews if you want to support or find me on social media. I don't do a lot of social media, to be honest. You're best off joining Telegram. I am much more active on there than anywhere else for the time being. But you can see YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels. You can listen to my music on SoundCloud. Send me an email, and you can donate or buy me a coffee, which would be lovely indeed. And you can get the Guitar Music Mega Bundle down here at the bottom, which is just a bundled up download of all the guitar ditties that you hear on the intros and the outros to these broadcasts. And as well, of course, we have the online community page Against the Machine, which is still under construction. I'm working on it feverishly in the background. And but if you join up now, you do get access to some exclusive live streams and the replays of those 3 books that you can see on the screen. We've got Surveillance Valley, 4 Arguments for Elimination Television, and we're currently working our way through the First Global Revolution, which I forgot to put up on display. I should have had it right here next to me on display. And the First Global, and actually I'll mention that something quite interesting when we look at the opening quotes of these kinds of books, right? So Between Two Ages, we just looked at this quote from Steppenwolf and Hermann Hesse. If you go to the First Global Revolution and you open this up and you look at the epigraph on here, it's this quote from Omar Khayyam. And this is actually the same quote that is found on the Fabian window, which says, remolded nearer the heart's desire. Only this has the extended version of that quote, which says, smash it to bits, and then remold it nearer the heart's desire. The Fabians don't want to tell you about that part of remolding the world to nearer to the heart's desire. But yeah, they got to smash it to bits first. And that's what we're living through, the smashing things to bits process phase of the plan. But yeah, if you sign up to Page Against the Machine, you can catch those replays. You can join the live stream on Wednesday nights and have a back and forth and a discussion in real time with me, which would be good as well. I would like to create an interactive experience because this is kind of interactive. You all get to hang out on the chat and chat to each other. But I would like to hear your beautiful voices and see your faces, wherever they are on the range of beautiful to not beautiful. But I would say, I would hazard a guess to say that you are probably all fairly beautiful in one way or another. And beauty is on the inside, as we all know. But that would be another way to support. You can pay monthly, you can pay yearly if you choose to do that. It would be lovely to see you on the inside there, indeed. And that truly is the end of tonight's Preamble Ramble. So, good to have you all on the broadcast. Got to do my little thing of moving a few things around, and then we'll get right into the book. I'm looking forward to tonight's reading as well. I saw somebody say they were looking forward to tonight's one. So am I, because I have it on good authority that there's going to be some spicy stuff coming up. And I said that at the beginning of last Friday's broadcast. And then when I went back to that good authority, and I said, I'm not quite sure what the spicy bits were that you said were coming up, it turned out that he actually meant this section we're going to be reading tonight and not the section that we did last Friday. So if you, like me, were reading along going, well, this isn't as spicy as Nick made it out it was going to be, tonight's the night that we get the spiciness, apparently. So let's see. everything seems to be working, and I think we are about ready to dive into the book. Check that out. I did my whole preamble ramble in less than an hour. Bish, bash, bosh. That's how you do it. That means we can get more reading done. Fantastic. So, tonight, we'll be continuing our reading with Part 4, Global Fragmentation and Unification. The cumulative effect of the Technatronic revolution is contradictory. On the one hand, the revolution marks the beginnings of a global community. On the other hand, it fragments humanity and detaches it from its traditional moorings. So that's the smash it to bits and remold it to the heart's desire bit of that particular quote that opens up the first global revolution, and that also is found on the Fabian window. The rollout of these technologies, the continuous nudging, because really the situation is being cooked and concocted in such a way that you really can't get by without exposing yourself to these technologies now. Good luck trying to avoid facial recognition cameras. Good luck trying to avoid biometric data collection, big tech, cloud computing, smart devices, all the whole gamut of stuff, unless you are living in a caravan on a campsite somewhere and, I don't know, like doing foot massages for a living, which wouldn't be too bad if you're into foot massages. I'm sure you could make a living doing foot massages. Then it's really hard to avoid this stuff. If you're a keyboard slapper like me and during the day, and you got this kind of IT dependent job, then you spend all day every day with a camera pointed at your face. And I don't mind doing it on the live streams right now because I'm doing it voluntarily, and I'm doing it about a topic that is important and I enjoy talking about, and that I think more people need to know about. But when you're just being stared at, you've got cameras pointed at you all day long, like how long before they are activated and you are tracked and monitored for your eye movements, for your tiredness level, for your rate of blinking, how long before it becomes mandatory for you to have that camera activated all the time so they can see how long you're at your desk for, and when you step away to go and walk the dog or get a cup of tea or burp the newborn, whatever it may be. So I feel like that's where it's heading. More monitoring, more tracking, and it'll be justified by, there's always a justification. Oh, well, we're losing productivity, and if you want to keep your job, now we've got all these AI agents to replace people. If you want to keep your job, you're going to have to allow us to do a lot more invasive surveillance, monitoring, tracking, tracing and databasing of your activities, just so we know that you are performing and earning the salary that we're giving you. You can see it going that way. So, continuing. Hang on. Let me get my pencil ready. The Technatronic revolution is widening the spectrum of the human condition. Not sure what that means, widening the spectrum of the human condition, but maybe he'll explain. It intensifies the gulf in the material condition of mankind, even as it contracts mankind's subjective tolerance of that disparity. So this is similar to what he was talking about in the previous section on the ghettos, where he was saying that the poor, undeveloped, he calls it the backwards countries, will get envious of the rich, developed countries. And this is going to cause problems. This is going to make them bitter, resentful, but of course, if we let them come here and they live here, and then they'll just magically integrate and become grateful and loving and appreciative of the culture and the system. No. That's not how it works, unfortunately. But it is a lie that we're sold. So I think that's what he's getting at. Yes, this gulf in the material condition, because now the people in the backwards poor countries can open their YouTube app on their smartphone, and they can check out the amazing book collection that Nick Hayes has on his channel, and be jealous because they don't have access to such wonderful books in their country, and they can start a jihad or do whatever it is that they do when they get filled with hatred for the Western free democratic world, right? But anyway, continuing. Though differences among societies gradually developed in the course of human history, it was not until the Industrial Revolution that these differences became sharp. Today, some nations still live under conditions not unlike those of pre-Christian times, and many live in circumstances no better than those of the Middle Ages. Yet soon a few will live in ways so new that it is now difficult to imagine the social and personal ramifications. So he's talking about the Technatronic revolution is rolling out at pace in some areas and slowly, gradually in other areas. And the ones where it's rolling out at pace are going to be, those people are going to be so advanced, living in such a different way that it'll be like a different species. And that's an idea that's been touched upon by H.G. Wells in The Time Machine, where you have the Morlocks and I forget what they're called, the dumb, pretty people who play around all day and then get eaten at nighttime by the Morlocks. But then you also have it in Charles Galton Darwin's Next Million Years, which I read in full on the channel. He talks about the wild men, humans, domesticate, and then the domesticated humans, and that there'll always be a small group of elite wild humans who are domesticating and controlling the rest of us. So it's a similar kind of idea that he's touching on. The result could be a profound three-way split in the attitudes and views of mankind. The coexistence of agrarian, industrial, and new technatronic societies, each providing different perspectives on life, would make understanding more difficult at the very time it becomes more possible, and it would render the global acceptance of certain norms less likely, even as it becomes more imperative. Fragmented congestion. This three-way global split could further strain the already weak fabric of social and political order and result in domestic and therefore possibly international chaos. Growing anarchy in the Third World would very likely involve racist and nationalist passions. Yes, it's always those bloody nationalists. Racist and nationalist passions. At the very least, this would create major pockets of disruption and chaos in the world. At worst, Third World instability could draw the more developed nations into potentially antagonistic forms of involvement that could have the same effect on American-Soviet relations as Balkan conflicts had on the European order prior to World War I. So this shows you, and he's kind of admitting here that this interdependence of nations and countries and the world's peoples goes back much further. It's not a new thing, because he kind of says in this book and also in First Global Revolution, they say that the world is it's newly interdependent in a way that it never has been before. All right, well, how do you explain the British Empire, right? How do you explain the Mongol Empire? All these other massive, the Roman Empire, right? These huge, bloated and bureaucracies and imperial efforts to take over vast swaths of the world. This interconnectedness has been going on for a long time, and it's the grand chessboard. It's the master manipulators, the dominant minority who know this game, the game of nations, as Miles Copeland calls it in his book, and who have been just running these scams over and over again, time and time again. So Brzezinski really making these predictions. It could go this way, it could go that way. Either he is playing us for fools, really, because he knows full well that is what this dominant minority do with countries and the peoples in those countries, or he, when he wrote the book, hadn't yet been initiated to that highest level of the science of civilization building and mass manipulation of huge swaths of humanity and to control them, right? So maybe he just was unaware of those practices and formulas at this stage when he wrote it, or maybe, as I've said before, he's running cover for the existence of that group and that the abilities and the knowledge that they possess. But continuing. In the most advanced world, the tension between internal and external man, between man preoccupied with his inner meaning and his relationship to the infinite, and man deeply involved in his environment and committed to shaping what he recognizes to be finite, prompts an acute crisis of philosophic, religious, and psychic identity. This crisis is aggravated by the fear that man's malleability may permit what was previously considered immutable in man to be undermined. And yeah, David James Flood says Bertrand Russell also talked about it. So yeah, Bertrand Russell also talked about this minority dominating the majority, but that also that split in societies as one group takes off with all this technology, with all this augmentation, with all this eugenics, and the rest of the peoples are just stuck in the dysgenics mode, scrambling around at the bottom, trying to get the scraps from the table, right? But go back to this point here in this paragraph. He's talking about the internal and the external man. That bit is kind of alarming. Man's malleability. And he talked about that earlier in the book, about how never before has the malleability of man been so easy to exploit and been so well understood. Man's malleability may permit what was previously considered immutable in man. So this is things like your innate, God-given human rights, your soul, your spirit, the value of you as a human individual with no more or less rights than any other human born on this earth, right? He's talking about things that have previously been considered immutable, unthinkable, questions that never would have come up before are now going to be discussed, and these protected characteristics of man being created in the image of God with the spark of God within him. That's going to be undermined. That's off the table now, because now it's Darwinian evolution. Now you're just a sack of biological chemical reactions. You're an animal like any other animal, and therefore you can be tamed, you can be manipulated, studied, controlled, domesticated, and treated as such. But continuing, the explosion in scientific knowledge poses the danger of intellectual fragmentation, with uncertainty increasing in direct proportion to the expansion in what is known. The result, especially in the United States, is an accelerating search for new social and political forms. The impact of the United States as the first global society reflects these conflicting tendencies. Though the United States searches for global stability and devotes its enormous resources to preventing revolutionary upheavals, yeah, okay. But I don't know, it's not just preventing them, but isn't it also funding and creating them? If you're the CIA, you are funding and creating revolutionary upheavals on purpose. If you are George Soros and the Open Society Foundation, you're also doing that. So, but oh no, yeah, we're just preventing them. Yeah, enormous resources, we're preventing. No, yeah. Its social impact. So this is the United States' social impact on the world is unsettling, innovative, and creative. Even as it provokes violent antagonism to itself, it sets off expectations that are measured by American standards, and that in most countries cannot be met until well into the next century. Yeah, this is the soft power of Americanism that is exported and sent into other countries. And if you want to know more about that, you got to look at Joseph Nye's book, Soft Power, which is up there on the shelf. And that reminds me, I went to the Trilateral Commission's homepage today, and they've got a little tribute to Joseph Nye, who apparently died fairly recently. But his specialist subject was soft power, and that is just all about culture creation, music, right? So this example of what we were looking at the beginning of the episode today, that's a kind of soft power, writing novels, encoding ideas, spreading these tales of debauchery and casual drug use and sex during a time where that kind of thing was frowned upon and distasteful for most people, to usher in the next generation of people who are going to be more open to the changes that are coming and planned for that group, you know. But that's soft power. So continuing. It accelerates the unification of other societies, not only because regionalism has since the 1960s become Washington's professed foreign policy formula, but also because other nations see in unification the best weapon for combating American influence. In its role as the first global society, it thus unifies, changes, stimulates, and challenges others, often against its own immediate interests. Quote, Americanization thus creates common aspirations and highly differentiated reactions. Yeah, well, one of the things that it creates is antagonism, because Americanization, part of Americanization is destabilizing to traditional values and norms, right? So I'm thinking of a film I saw that was doing the rounds when I was growing up. It's called American Pie, and it was just a film that I think they do it every generation, but it's because I remember my dad telling me that when he was growing up, it was a film called Porky's that did the same thing. Basically, it's just a bunch of horny guys trying to get sex and their misadventures as they chase women, and one guy gets caught masturbating with an apple pie. That was the famous scene. His dad makes an apple pie, leaves it on the table. He gets home, has a look at it, sticks his fingers in it, and the next thing you know, he's riding that thing, and he gets caught, and it's an awkward moment. As a teenager, you find that hilarious because you're dumb, and you find that kind of stupid stuff funny. But Americanization is, you got to remember that Americanism and that culture is itself fabricated and manufactured. It doesn't represent Americans. It wasn't created by the average Joe and Jane living in America, which probably doesn't exist given the size of the country and the vast differences between all the states. It's such a huge landmass that to have an average American is just preposterous, because all the different areas have very different cultures and histories and different combinations of cultures that settled there, and so to me it's bonkers that the place is even thought of as one country. But the version of America, the Americanism and the Americanization that gets exported tends to be one of kind of materialism and hyperconsumption and shallow assessing of people's looks and appearances, and maybe it's nice sports cars, and it's a lot of that. It's hard to put a finger on what I'm trying to say, but it's a lot of that kind of, I don't know, it's Americanism. You know what it is, right? When you see it, when you watch a film and you're just like, oh yeah, classic is Americanism. It's a fake version of what it's like to be American and live in America. Packaged, scripted, designed, planned by the social engineers, and then broadcast out to the rest of the world. And because one of the functions of doing that is to capture the minds and the imaginations of young people and turn them away from the traditions of their elder generations, of their culture, of their country, of their religious traditions, turn them away from that. Superficial, thank you, Tammy. Yeah, it's superficial, it's consumerism. Adam, thank you for these words. This really helps. It turns the young people away from their heritage, their national heritage, their religious and traditional heritage, and it interferes and with the communication between the generations, and therefore the older people don't like it and they blame it, and it stirs up this resentment and hatred towards the America and Americanism, which is what he's kind of saying here. That's why he describes it as unsettling and challenging, and ultimately says differentiated reactions. But anyway, let's continue. In the third world, the effect of United States influence is to intensify social contradictions and conflict between the generations. Oh, there you go. I see. I am clearly channeling the spirit of Zbigniew Brzezinski tonight, because I just said exactly what he said, only I said it a sentence before he said it. Right, continuing. Mass communications and education create expectations for which the material wealth of America provides a vague standard that simply cannot be met by most societies. Since neither communications nor education can be contained, it is said to be expected that political tensions will mount as purely parochial, traditional attitudes yield to broader global perspectives. And this is known that this is what would happen. This was decided, this was chosen. America was chosen for this purpose, to do this, right? In the advanced world, the contemporary challenge increasingly focuses on the identity of man, but in the third world, social fragmentation looms as the principal problem, one which is in a historic race with the advanced societies' only slowly maturing sense of their global responsibility for helping develop the third world. Even nationalism is subject to contradictory influences. Nationalism has never been stronger and has never before enjoyed such extensive, aroused, and conscious support from the popular masses as well as from the intelligentsia. The interaction of nation states still determines matters affecting war and peace. Yeah, sure. And man's primary self-identification is still on the basis of nationalism. That bit, I think, or at least in the 70s, was probably correct. These days, that's largely been squeezed out of most people. Only it is activated when it needs to be, such as in the recent goings-on here in the UK, where people putting up Union Jacks and England flags have been arrested, and those flags are being removed, whereas you can freely and happily and confidently display the Palestinian flag, and they're allowed to be hung up and displayed proudly without any problem. So there's a blatant contradiction going on there. And again, it's done on purpose to rile people up and divide them and get them fighting each other instead of unifying and going after the real, parasitical psychopath class. Totally lost my place. Oh, yeah. So it's man's primary self-identification being the basis of nationalism. Well, perhaps it was in the 70s, but these days I would bet you it's not for most young people who are going through a UNESCO mediated learning curriculum in school and being taught that they are global citizens and they are part of the global family. But if you remember earlier in the book, Zbig says that the global village, or the global neighborhood, as it is referred to in this book, which I mentioned before, by the Commission on Global Governance, he actually says it's more like a global city. He says that it's not about like a village. People know each other and they look out for each other. They've got each other's back. They do things for each other. But in a city, you are just transacting, and you are surrounded by strangers, and you are anonymous, and you don't really have those village connections. So he thinks a global city is actually a better symbol to use. He says that. So children nowadays are not really they're being told that nationalism is bad and that it leads to wars, and therefore you should identify with the earth, and you should worship Gaia, and you should be loyal only to the planet. But continuing. If I can find my place. Yeah, here. The non-Russian states in the Soviet Union are perhaps the only exception to nationalism's successful dissolution of colonial empires. Yet, precisely because this is so, nationalism is ceasing to be the compelling force that determines the broad character of change in our time. Though still the source of many tensions, it is tempered by the growing recognition, shared even by the most nationalist elites, that today regional and continental cooperation is necessary to the fulfillment of many purely national goals. The success of nationalism makes the nation a principal object, but no longer the vital subject of dynamic processes. Yeah. So the nation is out, really. It's not relevant anymore. Not to the purposes, the machinations of the people who really run this place. Continuing. Because he finds himself living in a congested, overlapping, confusing, and impersonal environment, man seeks solace in restricted and familiar intimacy. The national community is the obvious one to turn to, and a definition of what a national community is may well become more restrictive as broader transnational cooperation develops. For many peoples, the nation-state was a compromise dictated by economics, by security, and by other factors. What are those other factors, I wonder? What are those other factors, Zbig? An optimum balance was eventually struck, often after centuries of conflict. Today, the balance is becoming unsettled because newer and larger frameworks of cooperation... Is that clear? I can't tell if that's clear or not. Newer and larger frameworks of cooperation are emerging, and the effective integration of much smaller, more cohesive units into much larger wholes is becoming increasingly possible because of computers, cybernetics, communications, and so on. As a consequence, the Flemings and the Walloons in Belgium, the French and English Canadians in Canada, the Scots and the Welsh in the United Kingdom, the Basques in Spain, the Croats and the Slovenes in Yugoslavia, and the Czechs and Slovaks in Czechoslovakia are claiming, and some of the non-Russian nationalities in the Soviet Union and the various linguistic ethnic groups in India may soon claim, that their particular nation-state no longer corresponds to historical need. On a higher plane, it has been rendered superfluous by Europe or some other regional common market arrangement, while on a lower plane, a more intimate linguistic and religious community is required to overcome the impact of the implosion-explosion characteristic of the global metropolis. This development is thus not a return to the emotions or to the ecstatic style of 19th century nationalism, even though there are many superficial analogies to it. It takes place, by and large, in a context that recognizes the current necessity for broader cooperation on a level above the national. Right, so there you go. It's all about this, superseding the nation. It accepts as an ideal the functional integration of regions and even of whole continents. There you go. The functional integration of regions, so that's your Eurozone, and even of whole continents. Wow. It is a reflection of the desire for a more defined sense of personality in an increasingly impersonal world, and of the changed utility of some of the existing state structures. This can even be said of Gaullism, which has often been described as a throwback to 19th century nationalism. Nevertheless, Gaullism's major ambition was to construct a Europe that would be European and not dominated by an external hegemony, though to be sure France would exercise political leadership in it. I'm not sure what Gaullism means. Asmelia, I can see you asking what the 150 XP means at the top. I can't figure out how to turn that crap off, to be honest with you. I did have a look. There's this top fans thing going on, and if you quote and interact, then you get XP. They're gamifying it, basically. They're gamifying the interaction on the live stream. And I couldn't figure out a way to turn it off, so apologies. If there is a way to turn it off, shoot me an email, and I'll do it. So continuing, the new nationalism has many elements of the old nationalism, especially in some of the new nations. Their nationalism is still a radical, changing force, creatively mobilizing community feelings, but also prompting ethnic exclusiveness and conflict. There's a quote here in the footnote, which is, quote, "In spite of all the parallels to European nationalism, the new nationalism in South Asia is something very different. It differs in many more respects and for more fundamental reasons than appears from the qualifications just listed. The fundamental reason is that an historical process that in Europe spans centuries is telescoped within a few decades, and that the order of the happenings is deranged. Nationalism there is needed to provide the impulse for change, indeed for all the necessary changes and concurrently. The difficulties in this syncopation of policies, the historical necessity of which is seen by all the enlightened intellectual and political leaders in the region, are immense." And that's from an author called Myrdal. pages 2,118 to 2,119. So, pretty big book. So continuing, yet it's generally true, as the author of a suggestive paper notes, that, quote, the vision and objectives of society have changed. Today, a new concept of man and his world is challenging the concepts of the Renaissance, which have guided man's behavior for the past 500 years. The nation-state, as a fundamental unit of man's organized life, has ceased to be the principal creative force. Quote, international banks and multinational corporations are acting and planning in terms that are far in advance of the political concepts of the nation-state. There you go. We should probably check out the footnote for that. So this is the author of a suggestive paper. It's footnote 44, and we will skip to the back. And it says, it's here. A. Barber, The 20th Century Renaissance. Private paper, Institute of Politics and Planning, Washington, D.C., 1968. So it's private. It's not for public consumption. It's a private paper. Let's see. I just saw your question, ESP. Why is Nigel Watson called Kevin Redshaw? I think that's just his alias. You know, he likes to fly under the radar, perhaps, or maybe he has schizophrenia and it's an alternative personality. I don't know. I'm not sure. That's a good question, but you got to ask him. I haven't spoken to him for quite a while. As the nation-state is gradually yielding its sovereignty, the psychological importance of the national community is rising. I'm going to have to highlight that bit, though, because that's an amazing admission. It's over for the nation. The nation-state has ceased to be the principal creative force. It's now international banks and multinational corporations. But they'll still use the nation-state to drum up a bit of divide and conquer, of course. And that's what they're doing with the mass immigration and the transformation of people's communities. They'll stoke that fire until it erupts into something very ugly and violent, and then that'll be used to justify more police present in the streets, more digital surveillance, facial recognition, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, quite a humdinger there on page 56. So continuing. But as the nation-state is gradually yielding its sovereignty, like it's just giving it up. Like I don't know. It's this. He's writing as though the nation-state has some sort of agency and is just saying, yeah, okay, I don't need to be sovereign anymore. We can hand it over to the international banks and the corporations, but it's just been done by design. But anyway, as the nation-state is yielding its sovereignty, the psychological importance of the national community is rising, and the attempt to establish an equilibrium between the imperatives of the new internationalism and the need for a more intimate national community is the source of frictions and conflicts. And these kind of people, they know that they never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So they would always manufacture frictions and conflicts in order to, sell the pitchforks and the torches to both sides. There's always a profit in frictions and conflict. But continuing, the achievement of that equilibrium is being made more difficult by the scientific and technological innovations in weaponry. It is ironic to recall that in 1878, Friedrich Engels, commenting on the Franco-Prussian War, proclaimed that weapons used have reached such a stage of perfection that further progress which would have any revolutionizing influence is no longer possible. Yeah, right. 1878 they said that. And now what we've got, like robot dogs with flamethrowers on the back. Not only have new weapons been developed, but some of the basic concepts of geography and strategy have been fundamentally altered. Space and weather control have replaced Suez or Gibraltar as key elements of strategy. Okay, so weather control. There you go. Z-Big, crazy conspiracy theorist talking about them controlling the weather. What a nut. In addition to improved rocketry, multi-missiles, and more powerful and more accurate bombs, future developments may well include automated or manned space warships, deep sea installations, chemical and biological weapons, death rays, and still other forms of warfare. Even the weather may be tampered with. And just in case you missed it, on the previous page, he mentions it again. Just to make sure, hammer it home, that weather is being used in warfare. And there's a footnote here too. As one specialist noted, by the year 2018, technology will make available to the leaders of the major nations a variety of techniques for conducting secret warfare, of which only a bare minimum of the security forces need be appraised. One nation may attack a competitor covertly by bacteriological means, thoroughly weakening the population, though with a minimum of fatalities, before taking over with its own overt armed forces. Alternatively, techniques of weather modification could be employed to produce prolonged periods of drought or storm, thereby weakening a nation's capacity and forcing it to accept the demands of the competitor. That is Gordon J.F. MacDonald. I think the article is called Space, from a publication entitled Toward the Year 2018, page 34. These crazy conspiracy theorists talking about weather control. Continuing, these new weapons could either encourage expectations of one-sided, relatively inexpensive victory, permit proxy contests that will be decisive in their strategic political outcome but will be fought by only a few human beings, as in the Battle of Britain, or even by robots in outer space, or simply create such mutual instability that the breakdown of peace will become inevitable, in spite of man's rational recognition of the futility of war. In addition, it may be possible and tempting to exploit for strategic political purposes the fruits of research on the brain and on human behavior. Gordon J.F. MacDonald, a geophysicist specializing in problems of warfare, has written that accurately timed, artificially excited electronic strokes could lead to a pattern of oscillations that produce relatively high power levels over certain regions of the Earth. In this way, one could develop a system that would seriously impair the brain performance of very large populations in selected regions over an extended period. No matter how deeply disturbing the thought of using the environment to manipulate behavior for national advantages to some, the technology permitting such use will very probably develop within the next few decades. There you are then. Yeah, so that's just nuts. I don't even know which bit to highlight, just the whole paragraph. Page 56 to page 57. That's where it's at in this particular edition of Between Two Ages. Yeah, so artificially excited electronic strokes to impair the brain performance of very large populations. That is pretty wild stuff. Coming to a HARP station near you someday soon. Footnote is 47. We're going to look that up. That is, Gordon J.F. MacDonald. How to Wreck the Environment in a publication called Unless Peace Comes, page 181. Such technology, continuing, will be available primarily and, to begin with, exclusively to the most advanced countries. And there's a footnote here. This has led one concerned scholar to comment, quote, whether it is used to kill, hurt, nauseate, paralyze, cause hallucination, or to terrify military personnel and civilians, the systematic use of biological and chemical warfare will require the resolution of major moral and ethical problems. And that's Donald N. Michael from, quote, Some Speculations on the Social Impact of Technology, which is a mimeographed text of an address to the Columbia University seminar on technology and social change. So I wonder where all this research has gone. Did they just, Zbig, he published the book, and then they're like, okay, we're not going to develop that stuff because obviously that sounds terrible, and we couldn't do that to people without their consent and their permission, could we? No, we could not. Continuing. But it is likely that in the coming decades, some states in the third world will have taken major steps towards acquiring or will have acquired highly destructive weaponry. Even if they are not capable of using it against the major powers without bringing about their own extinction, they may be able and tempted to use it in underworld wars among themselves. The question then arises whether such wars would be interpreted by the major powers as posing a direct threat to the fabric of peace, and whether a joint response by them would be effectively mounted and imposed. The absence of accepted global institutions could temporarily be overcome by ad hoc arrangements and agreements designed to meet specific threats, but it is conceivable that in some cases there will not be sufficient unanimity to permit joint reactions. The mutual annihilation of some lesser states thus remains at least a possibility. Okay, there's a section here. I didn't know this. I didn't know there was a section with this title, but Toward a Planetary Consciousness. He says, yet it would be wrong to conclude that fragmentation and chaos are the dominant realities of our time. A global human conscience is for the first time beginning to manifest itself. This conscience is a natural extension of the long process of widening man's personal horizon. In the course of time, man's self-identification expanded from his family to his village, to his tribe, to his region, to his nation. More recently, it spread to his continent. Before World War II, it was not as customary as it is now for university students or intellectuals to describe themselves merely as Europeans or Asians. During the last 3 centuries, the fading of the essentially transnational European aristocracy and the successive nationalization of the Christian Church of socialism. The Christian Church, of socialism. I just read that as the Christian Church of socialism. That was one thing. So they've got the successive nationalization of the Christian Church, of socialism, and of communism have meant that in recent times, most significant political activity has tended to be confined within national compartments. Today, we are again witnessing the emergence of transnational elites, but now they are composed of international businessmen, scholars, professional men, and public officials. So this is the superclass. This is the David Rothkopf talks about in his book of the same name. There's an emergent transnational elite, the internationalists. The ties of these new elites cut across national boundaries. Their perspectives are not confined by national traditions, and their interests are more functional than national. These global communities are gaining in strength, and as was true in the Middle Ages, it is likely that before long the social elites of most of the more advanced countries will be highly internationalist or globalist in spirit and outlook. There you are then. Highly internationalist. The creation of the global information grid, facilitating almost continuous intellectual interaction. So he's talking about the internet there, the global information grid. And the pooling of knowledge will further enhance the present trend toward international professional elites and toward the emergence of a common scientific language, in effect the functional equivalent of Latin. This, however, could create a dangerous gap between them and the politically activated masses whose nativism, exploited by more nationalist political leaders, could work against the cosmopolitan elites. Well, it won't, will it? Because they'll allow the they'll allow the pantomime of national politics to continue, knowing that it will capture a whole bunch of people who will carry on going out to vote every 4 years and arguing and demonizing the people in the opposite team, the red team, blue team dialectic. So a number of people are just going to be taken off the battlefield by that nonsense, and they know it. So they're never going to rise up to cause a threat, because these nationalist political leaders, they're provided, they're paid off, they're under control, they're blackmailed like all the others, and they will arrive and they will be voted for, and they will be allowed to gather a certain amount of momentum in order to let those people blow off steam and feel like change is going to happen and coming if I vote for this new nationalist leader. But of course, it'll go nowhere, because those nationalist leaders will be in the pocket, they'll be paid off, and they'll be stooges of these cosmopolitan elites, these cosmopolitan international elites. That whole section there is incredibly important, I think. Yes, this is a spicy chapter. I will have to go back to my good authority and say he was right. So continuing. Increasingly, the intellectual elites tend to think in terms of global problems. One significant, part of that is because that's where the funding comes from, right? If you're an intellectual, if you're a scientist, you rely on grants, you rely on funding. I heard Alan Watt talking about this the other day. And you will only get grants and you will only get funding to study the things that are high up on the list, that are important aspects of the control grid, the mythology of global climate warming change, for example. And you will only get funding if you are studying that, if your proposals are built on the presupposition that that is real. Yeah? So that is how the intellectual elites end up thinking in terms of global problems, is because they need funding, they need grants, they need money to go into their little research institutions. And if they pitch it that they're trying to solve these global problems that everybody cares about and everybody's interested in, then that's how you get access to the money. But continuing, one significant aspect of this process, and the other thing, to go back to that sentence, the other thing he's implying there is that if you aren't concerned about global problems, then you're not intellectual and you're not intelligent, right? See, there's a little subtle implication included there. The intellectual elite, the most elite of the intellectual people we have, they're concerned about global problems, meaning if you're still concerned about your petty little nationalist problems in your petty little community or your city where you live, then you're not intellectual, you're not intelligent, you're certainly not elite, you are part of the problem. You backwards nationalist, probably Christian, probably married with children, far-right extremist scum. Continuing. I did a lot of reading between the lines there on that sentence, but let's carry on. One significant aspect of this process is the way in which contemporary dilemmas are identified. The need to overcome technical backwardness, to eliminate poverty by eliminating poor people, to extend international cooperation in education and health, to prevent overpopulation by eliminating poor people, to develop effective peacekeeping machinery. There's a little footnote here. It says, it's a quote. It says, "We are discovering the need for coordination at the world level." just discovering it, even though there's been books written about it that go back to, I don't even know how far they go back, but in my collection, they go back at least to I think the earliest one I've got is 1914. I can't remember when Civitas Day was published, but I think International Government by Leonard Woolf was 1914, if I remember correctly, without reaching over there and grabbing it and checking. Around that time anyway. So, but yeah, apparently in 1969, we are just discovering this need for coordination at the world level. No, it's like the plan has been all along a world system, right? But they're manufacturing the problems, and then they're coming in and going, "Ooh, to solve this problem, I think what we really need is like some sort of coordination at the world level." It's the same thing that's in The Open Conspiracy by H.G. Wells. It's also in a book called The Age of Consent by George Monbiot. And he is a Guardian propagandist. He's a vegan, not long after, and he's always slamming meat and meat production. And yeah, factory farming is horrific. But he's saying farming is the problem, and we need to eat less meat to save the planet. And then he went vegan, and then I think he got colon cancer. And there was a whole blog post he put on his website about how he had to have part of his colon removed. Not saying that's linked. I just remember this back when I used to read his stuff. But Monbiot is a bit of an environmentalist, rewilding kind of spin propaganda type character. I used to be into his stuff, not so much anymore. But he wrote a book called The Age of Consent, and that book basically advocates a democratic system that spans the earth and divides the planet up into group voting blocks. And back when I first read it, when I was way more ignorant of these kind of things, I thought it was a fantastic idea and a really good book. And I wrote a blog post reviewing it, talking about what a fantastic idea he'd come up with, you know. How things change when you learn a little bit more about what's going on. But yeah, problem, reaction, solution. Solution being coordination at the world level. But they frame it as though, whoa, we're just discovering this need for this thing we had planned all along. Continuing with the quote, coordination at the world level for looking ahead so that the pieces can be fitted together more precisely. This has brought us to the beginning of global planning. FAO is a pioneer. Its indicative world plan is the first such attempt, the prototype version of which will be ready in 1969. The ILO is working hard on a world employment plan. There's another quote here. The UN Center for Development Planning, Projections and Policies, the CDPPP, is preparing what could well be called the framework for a master plan covering all such activities. So there you are, UN as the source of the global government, the incoming global government. This is part of the task imposed on it by Assembly resolutions which request the Secretary General, in plain words, to prepare future development efforts which are an improvement on the present development decade. That's from Jan Tinbergen, The Way Out of the Labyrinth, FAO Review, 1968. Excuse me a sec, I'm going to have a sip. My throat is getting a bit scratchy. You can enjoy. Try not to stare too much into this demonic sigil on the front cover, though. CS Mali 369 over on Rumble says, Odyssey is 15 minutes behind. Yeah, I told you I was having problems with Odyssey. I might stop live streaming to Odyssey and just upload the replays there afterwards. Because what it does, it stutters, it buffers as I'm live streaming. And then by the end of the live streaming, it's 10-15 minutes behind. And then I shut off the stream and it cuts the stream with 10-15 minutes missing from the end of the video. It's frustrating, it's annoying. I'm not technical enough to fix it, so I might just start uploading replays there. It tends not to be very active anyway. Not a lot of people watch on Odyssey. The chat, I know we've got a couple of people there tonight, which is great, but the chat tends to be the least active out of the three. Going back to this footnote that we just read, that quote, that'd be worth getting a copy of that. That's 1968, where they're admitting that this is the beginning of global planning is in 1968, and that there's going to be a prototype version ready in 1969, a world plan, indicative world plan. It'd be good to get hold of the document that was published in. Quite an admission back in the 60s. But continuing with the text, these are all global issues. Only 30 years ago, they were simply not at the forefront of public attention, which was riveted at the time on much more specific regional, national, or territorial conflicts. The Technatronic revolution creates conditions that increasingly make possible global responses to these needs and to human suffering in general. Indeed, a rudimentary framework of global social and economic institutions has already taken shape. Wow. A rudimentary framework has already taken shape. The footnote to that is, to list but a few: a World Health Organization, a World Food and Agricultural Organization, a World Labor Organization, a World Educational and Cultural Organization, a World Bank, a Global Meteorological Organization, an International Atomic Energy Agency, an International Civil Aviation Organization, an International Agency for the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, an agency for tapping the ocean beds, etc. Yeah, I mean, yeah, so when people poo-poo global government as a conspiracy theory and the New World Order, it's like Zbig says it, Henry Kissinger's best friend and presidential advisor, and what was his title again? Something security, something or other. I don't know. But founder of the Trilateral Commission. He said it in his book. It's not me saying this, coming up with this theory. It's not some crazy crackpot conspiracy author, some conspiratainment talking head. It's academic stuff. He says it right here. Another powerful little quote to be aware of. Page 60. The availability of the means to cooperate globally intensifies the sense of obligation to act, but only in certain parts of the world, right? Conscience is easily pacified by a feeling of futility. An uneasy conscience is usually one that knows that it can act differently. The sense of proximity, the immediacy of suffering, the globally destructive character of modern weapons all help to stimulate an outlook that views mankind as a community. Yes, you got to view mankind as a community, and then you have to designate it the enemy of man, right? As they do in First Global Revolution over there. It's a hopeful sign in this connection that the yardsticks by which the public measures international competition are undergoing a constructive change. In the recent past, and even in the present, territorial expansion, population, and vague national claims of cultural and ideological superiority, as well as military power in general and victory in direct contests in particular, have provided the criteria for measuring status and influence. Gradually, these are giving way to rivalry in GMP figures, per capita income and consumption data, educational opportunities, creative and scientific attainments, research and development, standards of health and nutrition, and even competitive national Olympic scores, to say nothing of the space race between the two superpowers. To anyone living in 1914, the current international rivalry in producing more impressive charts and in defining new indices for measuring national status would be well nigh incomprehensible. At that time, nationalist geopolitics provided a more direct appeal. So we're kind of living through the unveiling, the revelation, the revealing of the one world system, the one world, new world order, global government. And it's like, we're not doing it, you crazy conspiracy theorists, but eventually they'll say, yes, we are doing it, and it's a good thing. It's a classic gaslighting all the way along. But when they come out and admit it, then they'll tell you it's a good thing. And you should be grateful. Continuing, he says, today, a different orientation is becoming dominant. So a different from the nationalist geopolitics of the early 20th century. Social problems are seen less as the consequence of deliberate evil and more as the unintended byproducts of both complexity and ignorance. Right. Well, isn't that convenient for the evil psychopaths among us? Shifting people's perception, managing people's perception, so that we don't look for evil. We don't look for the evil among us, the evil people, the psychopathic minorities who manipulate and manage and set themselves up as the shepherds of the global herd of humanity. We're not looking for evil anymore because we're not like those backwards superstitious people who believe in God and angels and demons and spirits and souls and all that nonsense. No, we are materialists, we are rationalists, we are scientific. We're in the Technatronic era, don't you know? Good and bad do not exist. And actually, that reminds me of something I didn't include in today's preamble ramble, which I'll tell you about right now. There's a film called Steppenwolf, named after the book, and it came out last year, 2024. And I didn't include it in the preamble ramble because It's another trailer, and it's not in English, but you can find it on YouTube. Type in Steppenwolf 2024, and you'll find a trailer for a film called Steppenwolf. But it's from Kazakhstan. And if you watch the trailer, it's this kind of hyper violent sort of. It's not a revenge film. I think maybe it's kind of a hyper-violent sort of a revenge film, but a girl hires this dodgy sort of ex-hitman to help her find her son, and they live in this nihilistic post-industrial type of place. And it's just, apparently it's just full of action, violence, fight scenes, yeah? But if you watch the trailer, it's got subtitles. And in the trailer, the main character, this hitman type character, tells the main character over and over again that good does not exist. Good doesn't exist. We don't have any use for good. It is not real. Good does not exist. And he literally repeats it 3 times. And the music's swelling, and there's all these highly edited scenes of machine gun fights and all this stuff. And but I just noticed that he's telling her good does not exist. And maybe we could play out tonight. I don't want to advertise it, though. I didn't mind advertising the film from the 70s because it's kind of quirky and a slice of history. But you can find Steppenwolf very easily. And I'll just show you what he looks like. So that if you are curious about this, you can check it out. But it's this one here. This guy is the main actor. I thought it was Riker from Star Trek: The Next Generation, but it's not. It's some Kazakh fella, and I think that's the one I watched. In fact, we're here. Let's just have a look at it. We don't need to watch the violent bits. We can just find a bit, and we don't need to listen to the audio either, because you can read the good old subs. Just so you know, I'm not making stuff up, right? So it's such a lawless city now. We could even speed it up a bit. You can't find anyone. You're a policeman. You promised to help me find Timka. He says, I'll find your son. I will. And then they go on a road journey together. And there's the spinning top, which reminded me of Inception, right? The spinning top is quite a critical symbol in the film Inception. So it's interesting that they put that in here as well. Quite an obvious nod. And yeah, lots of violence. And is there any need? So this bit here, right? So she asks, is there any need for good? He looks at her and he says, it's unnecessary. Because you've got guns. He says, good isn't necessary. Not at all. There's no such thing. It's unnecessary. You see how many times he repeated it there? Let's just go back and check that out again. I told you he repeated. Is there any need for good? It's unnecessary. Good isn't necessary. Not at all. There's no such thing. It's unnecessary. So this is the kind of thing that is being inspired by Steppenwolf and being named after it. This is the kind of soft power culture creation that is being rolled out and deployed into the hearts and minds of people who are willing to subject themselves to that kind of stuff. But just curious and funny little synchronicity. And links into this sentence we just read about, people aren't blaming evil anymore. It's just unintended byproduct of complexity and ignorance. And you hear this all the time, right? I hear this. People say, the politicians, they're all idiots. What a bunch of idiots. What a bunch of morons. They're just fools. They don't know what they're doing. It's like, they know exactly what they're doing. They're doing exactly what they're being paid to do, what they're told to do. They're playing the role. Remember, this is America's role, right? The politicians are playing the role that they are told to play. But this is quite an admission that we have been conditioned not to think in terms of good and evil, not to listen to our conscience unless it's about how badly we've screwed over the poor people and the developing world, and now we have to make sacrifices so that they can catch up, right? In that case, listen to your conscience. But in general, what's happening is we're just living through the unintended byproducts of complexity and ignorance. It's kind of like, when you take a medication or an untested experimental gene therapy mRNA injection, for example, they have side effects. There's main effects and then there's side effects. It's like, no, they're all effects. The side effects, the main effects, it's just effects. That's what that thing does when you take it. It's effects, right? But yeah, it's just a funny way to phrase it. We've been conditioned, and that's part of being indoctrinated into this globalist way of thinking. You lose your connection to, for example, Christianity, which would provide you with a framework for objective morality, which would help you steer yourself, your actions, your behaviors, your thoughts, your beliefs, your attitude, your words in the direction of what is good or what is God, good God. There's no accident that those two words are linked, right? But indoctrinating into this atheistic, materialistic, rational, global way of thinking. So probably more commentary than was really warranted for that sentence there, but there you go. Nice little tangent. So continuing, he says, solutions are not sought in emotional simplifications, but in the use of man's accumulated social and scientific knowledge. Yes, the scientific knowledge will save us. The experts and the science. Do what the science says. Believe in the science. Trust in the science. Follow the science. It's not a religion. It's science. And you follow it and you trust it and you believe in it and you have faith in it. But it's not a religion. It's science. Got it? Increasingly, it is felt that the variations in both scientific development and the human psyche do not lend themselves to doctrinal solutions formulated in advance. In addition, the unanticipated consequences of the discoveries of science have produced unanticipated consequences. Yeah. Science only discovers what its practitioners are being funded to discover. The same thing, as I mentioned earlier, with the academics, right? The science is controlled, quote unquote, science. Certain avenues of exploration and interrogation are not funded, and then others are funded. It's very closely controlled by the people who dole out the money, like most things. But yes, these are unanticipated consequences and unintended byproducts of complexity and ignorance in science have produced, especially in the more advanced countries, an awareness that the basic issues facing man have a common significance for human survival, irrespective of international internal diversity. Okay. Oh, this paragraph is incredibly frustrating. This is a great example of how he's just running cover. He either, when he wrote it, was ignorant of this dominant minority, which I find hard to believe, or he's running cover for them, because that is a frustrating paragraph. And I'm not sure what international internal diversity means, but it sounds like he's saying you got to think about human survival, the human race as a whole, i.e. on an international global level now, and put aside your petty little national concerns, because we have bigger fish to fry now. And so when your country is having its demographics altered deliberately by policy, then and you can see the birth rate plummeting in one group and the birth rate accelerating and increasing in another group, and whole areas are having their own legal jurisdictions set up and their own little economic zones where businesses serve only that culture and religion and language, that's a petty, problematic, nationalistic concern that you shouldn't be worried about. And if you are worried about it, then you should feel bad, and you should be more concerned about the plight of faraway people who are very poor because of what the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank has done to their countries, right? It's so frustrating. But I shouldn't expect Zbig to actually point the finger in the right place, when it comes to explaining why these problems exist. But anyway, we're nearly at the end of the chapter. We've literally got one more page to do, and then we'll wrap it. So, continuing. The concern with ideology is yielding to a preoccupation with ecology. Yielding. So, sorry for all the commenting, but when he says it's yielding, it's like, no, it's the social engineers who are making it happen. People are being conditioned by documentaries, by David Attenborough's soothing voice talking about this amazing tiny green lizard that exists on a remote island, and we will film it in glorious HD with a macro lens so you can enjoy the wonderful aspects of nature and worship Gaia and stop using plastic straws and driving diesel cars and eating steak, right? It's like it's being done to us. It's not just a natural, evolving, occurring phenomenon, right? It's by design. This is frustrating me now. Yielding to a preoccupation with ecology. Okay. Continuing. Its beginnings can be seen in the unprecedented public preoccupation. Like the public just choose what to be preoccupied with. Like the public aren't just totally molded and manipulated by newspapers, by their schooling, by their media, the Hollywood, the Americanism, the chat shows, the radio shows, the talk shows, the reality TV shows, all that stuff, the novels, the magazines, all that stuff, right? No. Public, they just decided. They've just decided to be preoccupied now spontaneously because it matters and they're good people. They've just spontaneously created an unprecedented public preoccupation with matters such as air and water pollution, famine, overpopulation, radiation, and the control of disease, drugs, and weather, as well as the increasingly non-nationalistic approaches to the exploration of space or of the ocean bed. There is already widespread consensus that functional planning is desirable and that it is the only way to cope with the various ecological threats. Oh, is there, right? Widespread consensus. Really? And where's that come from? UNESCO? And how's that been established? Through our schooling? Let me check out the footnote for this. Global fragmentation and unification. So, the age of volatile. No, we already did that, I think. No, we didn't. Well, that's part 2. Oh, it's here, 48. So this is Technological Man, the Myth and the Reality, a book published in 1969 by Victor C. Furkis. That might be a good one to look for, actually. Continuing. Furthermore, given the continuing advances in computers and communications, there is reason to expect that modern technology will make such planning more feasible. In addition, multispectral analysis from Earth satellites, a byproduct of the space race, holds out the promise of more effective planning in regard to Earth resources. So this word planning is very important here. Functional planning. Central planning, a planned economy. Where does that ring a bell? Can you think of any places where they've rolled out a planned economy? Can you think of what happened in those places to those people? Yeah. The new global consciousness, however, is only beginning to become an influential force. It still lacks identity, cohesion, and focus. Well, luckily, we now have Greta Thunberg to provide the identity, cohesion, and focus that we needed. Much of humanity, indeed the majority of humanity, still neither shares nor is prepared to support it. Science and technology are still used to buttress ideological claims, to fortify national aspirations, and to reward narrowly national interests. Most states are spending more on arms than on social services, and the foreign aid allotment of the two most powerful states is highly disproportionate to their asserted global missions. Indeed, it can be argued that in some respects the divided, isolated, and compartmentalized world of old had more inner cohesion and enjoyed greater harmony than the volatile global reality of today. Established cultures, deeply entrenched traditional religions, and distinctive national identities provided a stable framework and firm moorings. Distance and time were the insulators against excessive friction between the compartments. Today, the framework is disintegrating and the insulants are dissolving. The new global unity has yet to find its own structure, consensus, and harmony. And that is the end of part 1 of Between Two Ages, the global impact of the Technatronic revolution. Next, we will be moving into the age of volatile belief. But what an ending to part 1 that was, indeed. Frustrating, though. I don't usually get frustrated, but he was bugging me. I was getting a bit frustrated there. So I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. So these first 4 parts, we only covered, that's been 62 pages that we've covered so far, but so much is in there. I mean, I haven't recapped the crazy stuff that we've covered, but there was bits in here about it being possible to choose the personality of your children through chemical means. There's the admissions of weather, warfare, and modification. There's the admission of controlling the personality of your children as well. Did I just say that? I think I just repeated myself, didn't I? You can tell it's time for bed. But a pretty amazing little stretch of the book. And I suppose it's only going to get crazier and wilder and more interesting from here on out. I never expected such a small paperback as this to take so long to get through. But if the first 60 pages took us 4 live streams, we got a 300-page book. So we might be looking at another fairly long series, depending on how many tidbits I can include in the preamble rambles. But I did order something today, which I'm going to hopefully get before the end of this series and read to you as well. A nice little artifact that he actually mentions in this book, but I won't say any more about it. But I did find a copy. It was pretty cheap, which I was quite happy about. So that's winging its way to me now. But yeah, as Frank said, that section was a cracker. Yes, indeed. It's really aligned with First Global Revolution, which I'll say again, we're reading on Wednesdays in Page Against the Machine, the book club, and you can get access to those replays if you sign up, and you can join the live stream for that conversation. But these 2 books are incredibly complementary. They go together really well, and you can get the text for free online of both of them very easily. But they go together very nicely. The First Global Revolution is building on what he talks about. It's more of an attempt to push people into that global consensus that Zbig says is missing and hasn't yet been established in the 70s. I think other reading that would complement this book would be the book that Frank, you recommended. I just looked into the camera as though you could see me there when I said that. Frank, remember? It's the Ian Plimer book. It's down here. Here it is. It's called Green Murder. I haven't read this one yet. But this is a very up-to-date, serious, and scholarly deconstruction of the net zero nonsense that we are living through. And Ian Plimer, he's a professor, he's a geologist, and here is a 545-page book deconstructing and calling out the nonsense behind, environmentalism and Gaia worship and the Green Queen Climatriarch. And yes, Frank, I am pointing at you. Sorry, that was very rude. I shouldn't do that, should I? But I just thank you for all your contributions. And this, I'm really glad you put this on my radar because I never would have heard of it otherwise. It's a massive book, but the hardback edition is really nice. I'm looking forward to getting into and reading that at some point. And who knows, maybe I could even talk to the author. Although this looks like some really dense, comprehensive scientific stuff. That and it's got. Let me just count the footnotes here. It's got 1,667 footnotes. So before you go signing up to the green death cult of human hatred, please consider reading Ian Plimer's book Green Murder. But yes, the first global revolution, I think, is trying to pull together and establish some of that global consensus that Zbig is saying is lacking and needs to come next. But I thought that last section was incredibly good. It's just frustrating, though. But I could see why he got recruited by David Rockefeller, because he's totally unwilling to point to the people who are manufacturing these problems, namely the financiers, the elite bloodlines, the philanthropic foundations. And that reminds me, we were talking in the Telegram chat today about this book, which is Renee Wormser's upside down, Foundations, Their Power and Influence. Before we started reading Between Two Ages, we had a vote on the Telegram channel which book to read next, and we chose Between Two Ages. Obviously, that's why we're reading it now. But Foundations came in second, and so we're going to be reading this after we finish Between Two Ages. This is a 1958 book, and it is all about how the philanthropic foundations, Ford, Carnegie, Rockefeller, etc., were investigated back in the 50s, and the startling admissions that were made about their true purpose and their true raison d'etre. It's a very important book. Alan Watt references it very often, and that's coming up next. But it'll be quite a few weeks away, so you've got time to maybe read through it, maybe grab a copy if you want to read along. It will be quite a bit before we get to that. Okay, with that said, I think we're about ready to wrap it up. Heartfelt thanks to you all tuning in live. Frank and Gary and Hal1984 and Asmelia, Dars, David James Flood, Burning Beard. Thanks for all your comments. I'm sorry I can't read them and comment on them in real time as I'm reading this, as I'm commenting on this. It's my brain is just not that good at multitasking. And yes, I'm glad somebody, Hal1984 says, "Hi, Alan, we can see you." And yes, over my shoulder here, that indeed is the one, the only, the great Alan Watt. I'll show you what that is as well. So this is a picture of Alan Watt, and this particular collection is called Truth. It's got a nice quote on the back there. Most people who claim to seek the truth really want confirmation of those things which they already believe. Truth would require that they abandon their comfort zones and do something concrete to make real life changes in their lives. And his website there is at the bottom, cuttingthroughthematrix.com. And if you buy one of these and open it up, what you're going to find inside is probably not a little note. You're going to find a little flash drive. And these flash drives come preloaded with Alan's material, whether that be his blurbs, his appearances on various radio shows, his interviews. This one in particular is my favorite because it has his guitar pieces on it. It also has a whole bunch of documents. And look at that. I mean, such a beautifully presented. That's not zooming in. My camera's not zooming in on it. But it's such a beautifully presented thing to have. And it's got documents, music, interviews, blurbs, film. This particular one, Truth, has film recommendations as well as book recommendations, a whole reading list. And so that's why I wanted to get hold of it. And you can get hold of these. There's a whole series of them. There's 7 in total, I think. And you can order them from cuttingthroughthematrix.com. And that's a really fantastic way to support Melissa, who's keeping his work alive and uploading it to the various platforms and maintaining the websites. And I can attest to the quality and the thought, the effort, the care, the love, and the energy that's gone into these is really good. It's really worth the price tag, and it's a way to preserve his work, because we don't know how long the internet's going to be here. We don't know how long we're going to have access to these things that are stored on the various platforms that we go to when we want to listen to these things. So having hard copies and having physical copies is a darn good idea. And yes, I like to have him sitting over there with Hicks. This is my orangutan Hicks, and then above him is Alan. And it's just good to know that I take a lot of inspiration from Alan's work. I still listen to his stuff regularly. I'm still amazed. Like the other day I was listening to one, he was talking about this set of books that I have here is the 4-volume set of the intimate papers of Colonel House. And he was talking the other day about having, he was reading from the book, and he says, it's a very fascinating book. He says, well, it's fascinating when you first read it at like 5 or 6 years old. But then when you've read so many of these, and I just paused it. I said, did he just say he read that 5 or 6 years old? And that is actually what he says on it. Yeah, he was reading the intimate papers of Colonel House, which is a 1926, I want to say 26 publication of Woodrow Wilson's Handler, his memoirs. Let's have a look. I want to say it's 1920. It doesn't say in this one for some reason. 1926. Yeah, I got it right. So yeah, this was Alan Watt was reading that back when he was 5 and 6 years old, which is just crazy to me. I mean, I don't know. I was probably reading some childish nonsense at that time, but Alan was on it. He was reading about Colonel House, and yeah, it's just amazing to me. So I still learn so much from him, draw so much inspiration from his work. Melissa as well. I love talking to her, and we've got a talk coming up discussing book 2 of the C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy. That's going to happen. I'm hoping to get that finished in the next week, and then we've got it penciled in for the week after. So watch this space for that as well. So yeah, well spotted to Hal for seeing Alan in the background there. Yeah, I think that's it. Let's call it a night. Thank you all for hanging out. Remember, it's allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews if you would like to support, and you can do so. It doesn't have to be money. You can do it by liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, telling people about these broadcasts, telling people that you think they are valuable or interesting or useful. And, clicking on the links is always good. Make number go up. Make number go up. It's a great game to play. But if you can't spare it and you are able, then you can buy me a coffee, you can donate by PayPal, or you could join our humble little online community, Page Against the Machine, and participate in the Wednesday live streams where we're going through the first global revolution. And you can also go to the classroom and you can check the replays. And we've got the first global revolution, we've got Surveillance Valley, and we've got 4 arguments for the elimination of television, all sitting in there ready to go. Click on them, and then you go chapter 1. And actually, you will probably start with the foreword and the introduction. And that's a 2-hour video there. It's pretty nice. And you can play it and listen to it. And that book's worth going through, especially in tandem with Between Two Ages. It complements it really well. So that is it. Let's call it a night. Thank you so much for hanging out. Hope you have a lovely weekend and a fantastic week. And put this information and this knowledge to good use by using it as fuel in the tank of expressing and your humanity and embodying your humanity in the best way you can, which is doing things that involve creativity, by showing compassion, empathy, kindness, by experiencing reality in all its ups and downs and ins and outs and thrills and spills. It's about living and being human and preserving the best of what it is to be human, because that's what's under attack. It's our consciousness, it's our humanity, it's our kindness, it's our decency, it's our love, it's our spirit, it's our soul. All of that is under attack by these crazy technotronic technocrats. And so embodying it, doing nice things, helping people out, being a good person, listening to your conscience and orienting yourself towards what is good and beautiful and true, as I think Owen Benjamin likes to say. It's a good phrase. That's what it's all about. So I hope you can find some opportunities to do that in your upcoming week. And I'll be back next Friday. We'll be continuing with Between Two Ages. What a fantastic book. How much we are learning. How much is omitted. What a brilliant piece of evidence to point to when we are trying to convince those sheeple in our lives who we love and hold dear to our hearts to pay more attention to these agendas that we're living through. And you know, they're going like, I just don't understand why things the way they are. And it's like, I know exactly why they are the way they are. They wrote it down in books and they told us. So yeah, good luck and have fun doing that. I will check in with you next Friday. So have a good one. Take care of yourselves and each other. Till then, God bless.